Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are diving deep into one of the biggest questions we can ask ourselves. What actually makes a life good? We're going to be using the book Life Worth Living as our guide to really unpack this huge idea. So right out of the gate, the book hits us with this question, and I want you to notice that key word, expect. This isn't just about what we want from life, but what we should reasonably ask of it. And that one little shift in thinking, well, that's the starting point for this entire journey. But before we can even begin to answer that, the book argues we have to go one level deeper. We've got to start with a question of responsibility. So this is layer one, accountability. Who, or maybe what, do you answer to? This question, which was posed by a rabbinical student named Leah Zars, is a total game changer. It completely reframes the whole search. It suggests that our lives aren't just these little private projects we're working on. Instead, it implies we are answerable to something or someone much bigger than just ourselves. And that right there is the heart of accountability. You see, the book's point is that without this idea, trying to define a good life is kind of like picking your favorite flavor of ice cream. It's just a matter of personal taste. It takes away the urgency and maybe even the real meaning behind it all. And to explain this, the book uses an example you've probably heard a million times. The Smokey Bear slogan. I mean, we all know the line, right? Only you can prevent forest fires. But have you ever really stopped to think about the complete philosophical framework that's packed inside that one simple sentence? Okay, so let's break this down, because it's actually pretty brilliant. You, that points you out as the one who has to act. You're the moral agent. The forest, that defines the scope of your duty. It's what you're responsible for. And that pointing finger, well, that represents the authority that's placing this demand on you. It's not just a friendly suggestion, it's a command. So, where does that pointing finger, that authority, even come from? Well, thinkers throughout history have had different answers. For someone like Confucius, that authority is the community and the traditions that we inherit. For the Prophet Muhammad, it's a divine creator. But see the powerful thread connecting them? The idea is that we are not in this alone. We don't just exist in a vacuum. All right, so once we establish who we're accountable to, the next question is pretty obvious, right? This brings us to layer two, feeling. What's a good life supposed to feel like? What are the emotions that define it? And man, this is where we hit a huge fork in the road. On one side, you've got thinkers like Jeremy Bentham. And for them, the math is pretty simple. More pleasure, less pain equals a better life. But then on the complete other side, you've got a tradition like Buddhism, which says, whoa, hold on. Chasing all that pleasure is the very thing that makes us suffer. For them, goodness feels like peace, like detachment. But wait, what if it's not a simple choice between pleasure and detachment? The book throws a real curveball here, and it does it by telling the tragic and pretty dramatic life story of Oscar Wilde. In his early days, Oscar Wilde was basically the poster child for Bentham's whole philosophy. He lived for beauty, for art, for the relentless pursuit of pleasure. He filled his life to the brim, just like he said. And then, it all came crashing down. A brutal 2-year prison sentence for his homosexuality didn't just break him, it completely shattered that pleasure-seeking philosophy he had built his whole life around. And it was from that place, from the absolute depths of despair, that he wrote these incredible words. His whole perspective flipped. He had this profound realization that the most important human experience wasn't pleasure at all, but sorrow. He started to see suffering not as something to avoid, but as the very secret to life itself. So think about what this means. Wilde's ultimate realization is that a life where you're just trying to avoid pain, well, that's a shallow life. It's incomplete. He came to believe that sorrow is holy ground because it's the one thing that truly connects all of us. It plugs us into the universal suffering of humanity, and in a strange way, that's what makes us whole. You know, that idea of shared sorrow leads us perfectly into our third and final layer, scope. When we're talking about chasing a good life, whose good life do we actually mean? Is it just about me or you, or is it something bigger? To really get our heads around this, the source uses this amazing analogy of a cruise ship. Now, for the passengers up on the top deck, life is incredible. It is the picture-perfect good life. But all that luxury is only possible because of the intense, low-paid labor of the crew who are working like crazy down below deck. And that image, right? It just forces us to ask a really uncomfortable question. Can a life truly be good if it depends on the hardship of other people? This is where the scope of our responsibility really gets put to the test. And this isn't a new idea, of course. People have been wrestling with this for ages. The book points to figures like St. Paul, who believed that his own personal salvation just wasn't enough. His project was way bigger. He wanted to help heal a broken world. His forest, if you will, was the entire globe. So, there you have it. That was our journey through the 3 layers: accountability, feeling, and scope. We've peeled them back and, well, it's a lot more complicated than it looks on the surface, right? So, what's the big takeaway here? How do we put all this together? And here's the final, crucial insight from the book. There isn't one single, neat answer. The goal isn't to find the good life and then, check it off a list. The goal is to live inside the question of the good life. It's a constant process of keeping your eye on the goal, defining your scope, and, maybe most importantly, becoming comfortable with the beautiful uncertainty of it all. And you know what? This brings us full circle right back to where we started, with that pointing finger from good old Smokey Bear. Because after all of this, after looking at it from all these different angles, the book's position is really clear. The question is not if you are responsible, you just are. The only real question left for you to answer is about the boundaries of that responsibility. And so we end with the only question that in the end truly matters. How big is your forest? Is it just yourself? Is it your family, your community, or does it stretch to encompass the entire world? How you answer that question, and more importantly, how you live that answer, that is what ultimately defines a life worth living.